Welcome back to Moving the Needle. Now, if you've missed part 1 with Randy Lawrence, stop this right now, and I'm pretty sure you want to go listen to that. 90s motocross, Palmer, McGrath, Villopoto, absolute gold in there. Today, we're going to dive into part 2, which includes raising a pro, balancing dad and coach life, and what it really takes to build a champion today. Enjoy. We were just talking about it. It's no doubt a lot of the riders were causing a little bit of havoc here and there in the pits. The Aussies, when I was around, we were on our hardtails. When you guys were there, you had Z50s. I mean, I would have rather had a Z50, but hey, it's just, you got to keep yourself busy, because the mind races. If you're thinking about practice already, you're thinking about lines, it's draining.
Yeah. So, and again, it's, I don't think Nicholas Voulios was the one that was going to get on the Z50 and go act like an idiot for the rest of the day. He was going to go look at his telemetry and what was going on with his suspension so he could be ready and win the next day, where Sean Palmer was, running around half naked, sliding down the side of the hill on wet Visqueen, all night long and having some Rolling Rocks with Kurt, and then trying to win the next day. So there is just each athlete's going to be different. They're going to do it a different way. Yes, you have to be serious about what you're doing. And everybody says like Ricky Carmichael ushered in the no fun era. And he really did, because, when I left mechanicking to become a trainer, we kind of missed a little bit of that. I was able to make that transition because I understood the mentality of a rider, because I was racing at the time. I had been able to work with Jeremy in the past, and I understood what championship mindset was. I had spent 2 years with Ezra Lusk at Cowie as his mechanic, who was a very close competitor of Jeremy's when he was on Honda and Jeremy was on the Yamaha. So now I understood why, as good as Ezra Lusk was, why we were able to beat him through a season. You weren't focused on one night beating him, because you could see the personality traits, the thought process, the mentality of a champion, Jeremy McGrath, to a competitor who I know Kevin Windham really well also. And I can see why he didn't win championships. I can see why Lusk didn't win championships. So there's always those guys that they're as good as any of the guys that have won championships. They just missed the boat on those because of whatever reason.
What's the difference? Like, what can you isolate some of that? Like McGrath, Villopoto.
I guess the easiest
comical. Like, can you isolate a little bit of that you learned?
If I took it all into a really big spectrum, and there would probably be thousands of different intricacies under this umbrella, it'd be you have to block out the noise so that you can execute. Learning that from Jeremy focused on Jeremy. And I worked, and I did this with most of the riders that I've worked with, probably all of them, was focus on yourself. And when we went to Supercross, Jeremy said, I just need to do the 20 best Jeremy McGraths that I can do. Nothing else mattered. Because if you do the 20, he would say that. And if Jeremy got a 12th place start and did 20 Jeremy McGraths, he might be 4th that night. He might be 3rd. He might even get to be able to win. He might be 7th. Whatever. As long as he executed the 20 Jeremy McGraths, he could evaluate those 20 Jeremy McGraths at the end of the night. But he's not going to override and get worked up because Mikel Pachon or Wyndham hole-shotted and he's sitting here in 12th. Like, that's just going to make you crash or override or do something weird. Which Max Anstey's talking about some of that right now. Like, he knows he needs to be so perfect that he's overriding it. So he's not blocking out the noise. He's letting Deegan dictate what he's doing when he gets to the track. Because to compete with Deegan, he's got to be absolutely perfect. Well, quit trying to compete with Deegan and just do your best. Block out the noise. Villopoto, when push came to shove with Townley in 07, Ryan was always really blocking out the noise. Like anything could be going on. He could be getting yelled at by mom or dad or Mitch or me or whoever the case is. When he lined up, he was able to focus in and block out the noise. When I worked with Jake Weimer, my first couple seasons with him. So I started with Jake Weimer. He was still in Geico Honda. And it was the 2008 outdoor season that Villopoto won that season. Well, I started with Jake Weimer at the beginning of that season, right after Vegas, the last Supercross. And during that summer, like I would have Jeremy and Weimer at the test track and they do their 30, 35-minute motos together. And Jake would beat Ryan by 15, 20 seconds in a moto on Wednesday. And then go 9-5 on the weekend. And Ryan goes 1-1. And I go back to the Geico track and Weimer's in tears and doesn't know what's going on. And he's super upset. And it really took a while to get Jake from being like a jersey reader, worried about everybody else that's on the line, to blocking out the noise and doing Jake. Like I related to the same thing. I'm like, we need 15 Jake Weimers. If you do that, you'll be just fine. And he ended up, I think we won 8 or 10 Supercross races together, over the 2 years he was at Pro Circuit. And he won 2010 Supercross title. And he won the East-West Shootout, that year also. So, and he ended up winning 3 outdoor nationals and he did the Nations in 2009. So, once he got to that point where he was able to block out, and not everybody's going to be able to do it or execute it, but we have a really good relationship still. And he talks about how I was able to help him recenter his mentality to where he'd just focus on Jake and not everybody else.
Yeah, it makes sense. And what I'm hearing is like he clearly suffered from like some self-doubt, right? Maybe on a Wednesday, he's not fearing anything, he's not worried about making mistakes, what it looks like, who's there, jersey reading. But, I think a lot of athletes suffer from self-doubt. And I think, certain athletes, and maybe you can attest to this, they are born different. Like Jake Weimer, you had to coach that into him, right? Villopoto seemed to just have a chip on his shoulder and he had this raw talent. If you're saying he didn't even want to do the work, but he obviously feared losing or thought losing sucked, so he's like, well, I ain't losing, so I'll do whatever it takes. Oh shit, I have to do some of that work. I'll consider that later. But, someone like Jake Weimer, I think a lot of these athletes, they suffer from this self-doubt, isn't it?
Yeah, they do. And a lot of athletes, they think it's just, okay, we'll do more work and I'll be better. Well, no, you do more work, you're just going to be tired. And then you're going to do worse.
Or have have high expectations, right?
So,
because that's like quite challenging too.
So Nick Way was a challenging one also, because he would do, before I started working with him, he would do, he'd go to Glen Hill and he'd do like 2 40-minute motos or 3 40-minute motos or whatever he did. And then he would load up and on his way home, and you want to talk about ADHD, this guy, wow. He'd be like, well, I need to do more. So he'd pull off at the sand track and do another couple of 30s and then go home and do a run. And then when I started working with him, he's like, well, no, I need to do more. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I only did 2 35s or whatever today and a road ride. I got to go for a run. I'm like, no, you don't. And then we'd go to the races and he would have a linkage in his backpack and he would have a piston in his backpack and he would have an ignition and he's wanting to change all these parts at the race because I got to make my bike better. And he was chasing his tail. And he'd been doing that for a long, long time. I'm like, what are you doing? So when he had his best couple of years, I worked close with the team manager and we basically put him on restriction. We said, okay, you get a screwdriver for clickers, and you get one tooth up or down on the rear sprocket. We're not changing pistons. We're not doing valving at the track. We're not changing springs or oil levels. You know what the bike feels like. You're going to go out there and you're going to make it work. And then and it helped him because it took options away and made him focus on Nick. And then on top of that, he always wanted to start 12th and move his way up to 7th. So I started discussing that. I'm like, how come he ain't going to start? Well, I messed up. Well, I did this. There's always an excuse why you didn't get a start. Well, I did this. Well, I did this. Well, you did 40 of them perfect before the gate dropped. So I'm like, just whole shot a race. You're going to go back to 7th. Don't worry about it. Just lead 3 corners or something. Like, lead something. So I started getting him to lead practices. Try to be the first guy out in practice. And then at least you're in front of all the guys that you're going to be racing with at some point. So he started doing that. And then he ended up whole shotting a race. And then he came in and he's so ADHD. He's like, dude, you just see the whip I threw out of the first corner on the triple. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I need to do that because I knew it'd be on TV with Chad next to me. Like that was his thought process. But he did. He faded back. I think he got 5th or 6th that night. And he was super upset. And I'm like, you got to whole shot some more. And once you get comfortable leading, then you'll be on the podium. He had 3 podiums that season. And he had more hole shots than anybody on the track, and he was a privateer. So you got to work with each individual with what their strengths and weaknesses are. And whenever you find a weakness, you got to pull that out of them. And be like, okay, because they're all strong, they're all fast, they're all fit, all their bikes are good. You know, what are they willing to work on that week to make themselves better the next weekend? So it's challenging. I mean, I worked with athletes and trained riders for 17 years after I did 15 years as a mechanic. And some of them you just see a lot of natural things in, and like Jason Anderson, he was so skilled and talented and loose and flowy. But of every rider that I've ever worked with, he was the furthest off physically when I started with him than any athlete I'd ever worked with. And after it was probably only a couple of weeks, I said, if you do the next 2 years and you just do the work, you'll be an A-list rider and you'll be on top of everybody's page to be on their team. And he did. Yeah, I mean, he had that much skill. He wasn't doing the work. Whether he didn't know he needed to or didn't know how, or whoever was around him wasn't guiding him in that direction, he wasn't doing the work that he needed to do to be competitive. So, I mean, the writing's on the wall. Like, everybody sees what Anderson has done in the past and how good he is on a dirt bike. Like, he can do whatever he wants. And now he's on the Suzuki and the thing actually corners. So the kid can get through a corner now. He can turn underneath anybody. He can do whatever he wants. The level's just really high right now. So we'll kind of see where his season ends up. But it's pretty fun to watch him back on the Suzuki.
Yeah, I watched World Supercross here in Cape Town, and dude, that battle they had at the end, but he was getting him in a turn and be able to set up more inside and then get the jump quicker.
Yeah.
He did it every lap. But that's so interesting. Like you mentioned, like a Nick Way, it's almost harder to do the mental work, to really look inside yourself and be honest that you doubt yourself or you're not confident, or you're literally sabotaging yourself because you're worried about the spotlight, or you'd rather start 12th, get 7th, because everyone's like, damn, dude, you had a shit start. Now you got 7th. That feels good. But if you lead and get 7th, that feels worse because of your expectations of, well, I should have, a word we shouldn't use, for lack of a better term. And I think about this too. I for sure self-sabotaged myself over the years until I worked with the right people. And it's so fascinating. The thing with sports is you just, like, imagine everyone being able to see all your good, your bad, your ugly work at a desk and know what's going on and being able to comment on it. Like, being in sports is tough. I was thinking about that. Like, why are these sports stars, like, why do they battle so much from anxiety and other issues? And obviously we've got all the people with comments and stuff. It's like, well, what other industry are you exposed to everyone else having an opinion on you daily?
Yeah. 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 You're
Like,
in a
everyone has
fishbowl.
an opinion on why. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're in this. Oh, it's just mental, man. So that's really interesting picking apart. And I was wondering what you've seen with motocross testing, because sometimes I think these guys chase their tails. They can change so much on a bike compared to downhill. Like, what do you think about comparing downhill testing to motocross? Because you can change so much, the offset of a fork and the height of the pegs and the motor, and
I do think downhill could maybe take a page out of the moto book as far as testing and what they put into it. And I'm not saying some of the teams don't. And I know that there's a ton
Yeah.
of teams have been out here and they've been working with Fox and doing their suspension and all that stuff. And I think that's great. And we can get into that in a little bit with the suspension program that we have for Ryder and we've had for the last couple of years. But on that same note, it's like, when do you stop? And that was Nick Way. We made him stop. And then he started to understand what his motorcycle did, good or bad, and he was able to adjust to that. And again, I learned that with Jeremy. Like, not many people would even know this, but in the time I spent with Jeremy was when they went from the 80 front tires to they started making the 90. It was a little bit bigger, had a little bit more plant. And well, it's a bigger tire. It's got more plant. Everybody just used it. Jeremy was like, well, if I'm in a rut and I'm on the 80, it's not grabbing the edges as hard and I don't have to be as balanced. So I have a bigger sweet spot with the 80 than I do with the 90. Yeah, if you're Anaheim hard pack or what Glendale was the other night or 2 weeks ago or whatever, yeah, you might want the 90 because you want that extra plant. But we would test many, many different things with Jeremy during the week. And we'd show up on the weekend. He'd be like, well, go back to what I had last week. Well, we tested this and it was better. He's like, yeah, but I don't want to think about it. I know what I have. I know what's going to do good or bad. And I'll be ready for maybe where it doesn't work so great. And I'll adjust. And, he was good enough to make those adjustments mentally. And he was so in tune with his bike and what it was doing. And, fast forward now, like, Kenny Roxon's on a 8-year-old platform and he's been on the same setting for 3 years and he does 2 or 3 clickers on the weekend and, he's in contention to win races. You got Sexton on the 3rd brand in 3 years. Over the course of the last 20 years, the Kawasaki doesn't corner like some of the other brands. It's just a characteristic of the bike. For whatever reason, I don't think I've ever seen anybody on a Cowie turn underneath the other guys. They steer with the rear end. They slide it. They carry the momentum that way. That's kind of just the way it is. Villopoto steered with the rear end. Stewart steered with the rear end. Eli figured it out. He steered with the rear end. Even with early on when Davey Millsaps went to the Suzuki, when he was on the Rockstar Suzuki and I was still working with Anderson, he was like, if I could learn how to steer with the rear end, I'd win more races. But he was on the Suzuki that turned really well and he could turn underneath anybody. And he had the red plate for the first 8 races that season. And now we got Chase in a situation where he pushed the front end on the Honda. He wasn't super happy about the KTM. Maybe it was too flexy for him. Maybe it was whatever. But he won a lot on it. And when I knew he went to Kawasaki, I'm like, he's typically a guy that pushes the front end because he's trying to put a lot of weight on it. And I'm not sure the Cowie is going to be the direction for him. And now we see he started on I'm1. It didn't go great. They actually took Levi Kitchen's suspension off of his test bike and put it on Chase's bike that next week before San Diego. He's on pro circuit triple clamps now. The shock's off the bike between qualifying sessions and between practices and heat races, and they're in a position now where they're chasing their tails a little bit, which has to be frustrating for him. It has to be frustrating for the team. And hopefully early on in this, they can just stop, take a step back, get out of the little bubble that they're in, which is really, really hard to do, and find some common ground for Chase to start having some success. And I listened to a lot of podcasts last week that were like, yeah, the team's willing to do anything they can for the guy. And they'll work, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day to make the bike better for him. But maybe the best thing for him is to be like, okay, what was the best setting we've had? We're going to go to that, and we're going to do 2 weeks on it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well said, man. I was thinking the same thing. Like, and that, paralysis through analysis at some point. You got to admit that.
Yeah. So
I was going to say, like, as much as we can learn from moto, and I totally agree. I think there's a level of professionalism there that's come over to mountain biking, and I think we do an incredible job with the resources that we have in the industry. At some point we can level up, learn from the industry, and the likes of Loic and stuff, having a mechanic with him almost year round. They test a lot, they know what to test. Fine, great. But I think what moto can learn is, like, we only have so many things we can change on a bike once they've set the frame and the geo, right? And then we leave it. Maybe we change bar height. Like, if you go to Champery, you're like, okay, put a few more spaces under the bar. But that's really it, and a few clickers. So, and then you just have to learn what the bike does. It's maybe not perfect everywhere. And I think that's what motocross maybe can learn from us, or some of your riders have. It's like, the bike's not going to be perfect everywhere. But if you know how it's going to react, you can still ride it fast, right? Within reason. And I'm not trying to down talk any motocross out there. I've never been at that level.
No, exactly. Yes.
But I think on downhill sometimes I would sometimes be like, well, I don't want to go testing. We've got nothing to test. Like, that's how simple it was sometimes. There was nothing new to test. We're not going testing. Let's go do something else with our time.
Yes.
Valuable, yeah.
Yeah. So we're in a position now with Ryder coming into his first season elite, and he was on the YT program last year that was put together by Clay Harper, which was amazing. But at the end of the day, like, YT program shut down. 90% of the sponsors that were on that team last year, we already had previous to that. Some of those sponsors came because I was like, hey, Ryder's going to be on this team. We support the team. They're like, yeah, sure. And I guess we could go into the Fox program that we have for Ryder at this moment. And we can even lead into, me working with this team. Is Sergio Avanto he's the suspension guy that does OE testing for Fox at this point. And he's been there, I'd say maybe 5 years now. Again, I met Sergio in 99 in Leger. He was working for Manitou. And I was Jeremy's mechanic at the time. But it was summertime and Jeremy was taking the summer off. So I'm over in Leger, getting ready to race. I met Sergio. We were talking about things and industries and things like that. And he's like, I would love to be in the motor industry. I got him an interview with the team manager, Yamaha. Soon after that, I don't remember how long. And he was a really good CAD designer, which there wasn't a ton of that at the time. And the suspension guy we had at Yamaha was amazing. John Har, he'd been there forever. And he was, in my opinion, one of the best shim shufflers of all time. He could do a really, really good job, but he wasn't a computer guy. He wasn't analyzing linkage ratios and progression. And there was some of that, but it was kind of dark ages then on some of that stuff. And so I got Sergio an interview at Yamaha. He came there. They hired him on as a parts guy. And then he started playing with CAD design a little bit. He's being in the parts room. He's unpackaging bolts, putting them in a bin box. Like, he was just the guy doing that stuff, making sure we had the clutch plates we needed, like, steering stem bearings. And he was the parts guy. So he started working with John R. on some of the CAD design stuff for the chassis and things like that, and made some improvements. Did a really good job for the team. And he was still there through 01 into 02. And when I went over to Kawasaki to work for Ezra Lusk in 02, they had chassis issues. And I brought Sergio up and what he was able to accomplish for us with Jeremy on Yamaha. So they did an interview, and next thing you know, he's working along with Graham, who was the suspension guy at Cow at the time, and the KYB guys that were not far from where Kawasaki was. So Sergio started doing the chassis analysis and what it was doing, what it wasn't doing, what he could do to change it. And he started developing rocker arms, pull rods, triple clamps, the degree races, in and out races, all those types of things, how we can get more weight on the front wheel. We started moving the pivot on the rear of the motor. We started raising it up a little bit with kind of ovaling out the swing arm pivot and machining new inserts to put in there, because you got to use stock cases, production rule. But we raised it up a little bit, and the way the chain drove down into the sprocket, add a little bit more weight to the front end. So we started doing a lot of stuff like that and making improvements. And then he stayed him out. He was actually with Soaring Eagle Suzuki when Roxon won his outdoor title. And then he was with Yamaha. He did a lot of testing with Brock Tickle and Yamaha just before Yamaha transferred their factory effort on the 450 from Yamaha Motor Corp to Star. Because Star was already the lights program. So he led the Yamaha development program with reversing the engine, doing all that stuff, I'd say 17, 18, 16, 17 in those couple of years.
No, wait, and he's back in mountain bikes now.
And then he went back over to Fox. And this literally was right when my son started riding mountain bikes. We got some frames from Hyper. I knew Tom Rogers over at DVO. I knew Bryson. I knew a couple of the guys that worked there. I reached out to those guys and was like, hey, Ryder's getting into mountain bikes. He's going to start racing. Here's one thing we do to help him with some suspension. And they went all in, and they took care of us. And literally at that same time, Sergio just went back to Fox, and I talked to him. He's like, yeah, I'm just here now, and we'd love to do something. I'm like, well, we're kind of on hold because we're working with the DVO guys, and we stayed. The guys at DVO were great for Ryder as an amateur, when he was moving his way up. And we weren't able to do anything with Sergio, for those first, I'd say it was probably 3 years, because he was 14, 15, 16 years, just all the stuff out here in the U.S. But he did really well. He won pretty much everything, and then Asa came in, and then he was second most of the time. And then for 2024, Ryder had opportunity to go to with the IFR team with Joe Breeden over in Europe, and that was to be his first year junior. And I brought the Fox program to the table, and we had, the teams meetings, face to face with Joe, myself, Ollie, Morris, Sergio at Fox. We did a couple of those meetings, and then Joe decided to go with Olin's program anyways, which was fine. So as we went over to Europe, we had to get rid of some relationships that we'd established here in the U.S. for Ryder, wheels and bars and stems and suspension and, things like that, which obviously if you're on a good program and if you have that opportunity going to World Cups, you're all in. We even lost Fox clothing, which Ryder's been a Fox clothing athlete since he was 3. And then
really? That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool that he has been. It's obviously, it's tough, man. You gotta understand the long-term play, I guess.
Yeah.
It's super interesting that I'm hearing, like, I've got a lot of stories of the networks that it's 25 years in the making that we maybe then circle back and do something together. It's super cool. And you've probably known that, like, it's all about your name in any industry, you've only got
it's
one name,
it's
and
relationships. And again,
relationships are just everything, man.
And Ryder's had so many really, really good opportunities. Because he's been a great athlete since he was young. And he started in freestyle. We started going to Woodward when he was 5. He learned 360s at 7. He jumped the Beggar ramp when he was 7 years old on a 16-inch bike. There was a custom-built Haro, with custom cranks and, through the brand manager Haro at the time. And he's just had really, really good opportunities. And then he got into he learned flips at 8. He was doing shows at 6, 7, 8, in the Honda Center for the KISS Arena Cross team, and he was doing like school shows. He'd be like this little kid, playing tetherball with the kids at recess while we're setting up the ramps, and then he comes over and he's doing box jump and quarter pipe stuff on a little 16-inch bike. So he's been doing stuff like that since he literally was like 5, 6 years old. And then he got into racing BMX.
Did you think he was gonna stay in freestyle? And also, as a now new dad, I don't know if I have, or what's the word? Like, is it not scary seeing him doing it 7? Like, let's unpack this dad mentor thing. What's it been like? Like, seeing a kid being so talented and then clearly wanting to pursue a pro sport, and then, you've got a lot of experience to try guide him if he's willing to listen, which a lot of the times they don't listen to their dad, I guess. I hear.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're in a little bit of that right now. I think we're coming out of that revolving door right now, I think. But it was hard, because my brother early on, he's like, hypothetically, you have a son, which I do, and you can pick the sport he's going to do, and he's guaranteed success in it. What do you pick? That's hypothetical. And I'm like, your first answer is going to be golf because it's safe.
Well, yeah, I thought,
and they make millions of dollars. And they make and they make millions.
That's my answer, selfishly. That sport sucks to make it, though, dude. Sucks to make it. It's like the return on that investment ain't strong.
No, it's not. And then in the same conversation, I was like, but how cool would it be to see him stand on the podium and win an X Games gold medal in park or dirt, something like that? Like, that's where my heart's at. Like, that's just what I've always believed. That's what I love. Like, I watch every little piece of trail riding, and when it's back east, I watch every piece of X Games, BMX stuff. Like, we grew really, really close to Pat Casey. We started riding over there when Ryder was 6 years old. We ride at Andy Buckworth's house all the time. Like Ryder's been around this group of riders since he was really, really little. And that's always, 20 inch has always been my passion. I race mountain bikes. It was great. I love it. But I still ride a 20-inch bike. I have a 20-inch bike right now that I go to the pump track and I ride dirt jumps and it's brakeless, which is really, really weird to even say. But I love it. I'll ride my 20-inch more than I ride my dirt jumper.
You are weird that you haven't put that you're still brakeless and riding a 20-inch at your age. That respect, actually.
So
that's respect.
And it is challenging because if you're off of a 20-inch for any amount of time on a bigger wheel, when you get back on it's just really squirrely. So
yeah,
early on, I did feel like Ryder was going to be a freestyle guy. He started riding the Toyota Triple Challenge at the Supercrosses when he was 9. Was when he started riding those events. Just kind of as like the future BMX, jump in here today or whatever, it wasn't like he was competing against those guys. But he went up until, he was still doing it 3 years ago, where he was doing like flip bar spins, double trucks, things like that on dirt jumps, which he can now ride his 20-inch for 4 months and go, and he's doing truck drivers and flips and bars and nothings and like all that stuff within 10 minutes of riding his 20-inch still. which I love. Like, I love him riding his 20-inch bike because I think it's really good for skills. And then he raced BMX for like 5 years, and he was, a top 5 NAG rider every year. We did some some world championships. The last one he did was in Belgium in 2019, and he got 2 world numbers. He got 3rd in cruiser and he got 6th in class. And it was funny, Scott Beaumont was at that race. And I hadn't seen him since we were racing in the late 90s. And he was like, no way. So then he's like standing with me between like semis and quarters. And I mean, we had like 16ths. There was 160 riders in his class at that race. And so he had really good success racing BMX. But, as anybody knows, there's no end game when it comes to BMX racing. And soon thereafter, we did get that's what kind of when we got our mountain bike frames and started getting the suspension literally right when the world shut down for COVID. So I had a trail bike built up for Ryder, and we went to Crestline, which most people know Crestline. They do a lot of testing up there and stuff. And that was the first place that Ryder rode downhill. And he didn't know how to use front brakes or shift or do any of that stuff. And he was just skidding into trees and going over ruts and blowing off the track, but he loved it. Like, he really liked it. So that summer, as things started coming around from COVID, he was flying to do BMX races. And then Big Bear opened up and they had a couple of downhill races. So those were his first couple downhill races. And he was on the podium right away. And we never put him in the Cat 3s or 4. I mean, he was just, 13, 14, Cat 1, whatever it was. And he just took to it really well. Like, it was a very short period of time that he was competitive for anybody in the States, as far as downhill. And then his first dual slalom, which I loved dual slalom. That was always my...
Yeah, I miss that. I miss it as well. It's cool. I mean, it is a cool sport.
I love doing it.
Grow bigger.
Yeah. So I built him the sickest dual slalom bike for national champs that first year he was racing. Like, short travel suspension. It was a slope bike, 26-inch wheels. Like, I mean, the thing was sick. Flat pedals. And he rode down the track and he's like, oh, my dirt jumper. I'm like, no, you can't have this. This bike's for dual. Like, you have to ride this bike. And he's like, and I want clips. And I'm like, what? It's like a disgrace. Like, you want a hardtail? And I'm like, no, you can't. So I went back. I put a front brake on his hardtail. I put his clip pedals on his hardtail. And I mean, he won national champs his first year in dual. And he
on clips that. Though, so he's not doing the Lawrence name justice there. That's a bummer, huh?
He actually did his first couple of downhills on flat pedals though. And
I like starting and having the skill set from flats. I think that's really good. I think kids miss that these days.
In his first downhill race at Big Bear, he was flat pedals, and he did a suicide on one of the tabletops on Miracle Mile during his race run. He's like, should I do a suicide in my run? I'm like, we're here to have a good time, of course. So, and he was still on the podium. So that's kind of who I want him to be. I want him to, so I want him to enjoy it and like do everything. And obviously now he's turning elite, and you got to be serious, and you got to be trained, and you got to be this, and you got to be that. But I think,
how are you balancing that? How are you guys actually physically balancing that?
We didn't, because when he was racing BMX, he was up in the morning. He was on the rower. He was doing sprints. We had a gate in the garage.
Were you a BMX dad, for lack of a better term? Were you that dad?
And I told him, yes, I was, because I told him, if you want to go to these BMX races and you want to be competitive, these are the things that you have to do. And he did them. Yeah. And he was competitive. Now, if he didn't want to do those things, I wasn't going to fly to races. I wasn't going to travel to races. I wasn't going to pay the entry fees to hopefully make the main. It was like, if you're going to go, you're going to be in expert class and you're going to be there to win races, and that's just, that's been our life. And then we got into the mountain bike stuff, and the training for mountain bikes, we kept it very, very similar to what BMX was, because it's a lot of high intensity. It's a lot of sprinting, a lot of plyometric type gym stuff, form and function, upper body stuff, just everything for strength and body control. And then just volume of riding bikes. Like his first 3 years, he was doing 18 to 20 downhill races a year. We were driving to the Port Angeles for the Northwest Cups. we were going everywhere. We flew to Windrock so we could see how the East Coast kids rode, so like we were all in. If he was going to do this, like, we're all in, but you got to be all in too. And he was, he was winning a lot. And then Asa shows up, and I will say, Ryder's the last junior that Asa competed as a junior in 2023 at Windrock, and Ryder won and Asa was second. Asa had a mistake in his run, but it is racing. And then Asa, from that point, he went on to...
That's why there's a stopwatch, right?
That's why they're starting to finish.
That is tough. Yeah, that is tough, right?
Yeah, so
to come up against someone like Asa, that doesn't mean Ryder's not an incredible talent, right?
Yeah, so and you're kind of just overshadowed by that, which they still get along. Ryder, that year stayed a couple of weeks in Colorado with Asa, and they rode together, and even down to Fort William, the first World Cup they did. Ryder, not too many people know this, but Ryder at the U.S. Open 2023, in his seeding run, he crashed and broke both of his arms. So he was out for 3 months. He didn't have to have surgery. The bones healed without surgery, and he got back on his bike, and that's when he got his deal with the IFR team with Joe. And then Joe Breeden and the team flew out here. I got them all tickets for Anaheim 1. They flew out. They did the training camp and went to Supercross and did all that stuff. And we built the bikes. We did all the stuff at the shop. They went to KTM and checked everything out. And it was the beginning of a really, really good week for, the team to bond and do some riding together. And they went over to Telonix to start doing some photos and things. And the very, very first run down the hill, Ryder crashed and broke his left arm.
Oh, no.
So he was 5 weeks back on his bike. And I get a phone call, and he's like, I'm not racing Fontana this weekend. And I'm thinking, why? Because the team doesn't want the bikes shown yet? That was my thought. And he's like, I just broke my arm again. And I'm like, no way. So that was a bit of a fiasco. It was broken worse. He had to get surgery. He had to get it plated. He had to get external fixation, holding some of the ligaments together and things like that. So he was out of his cast 4 weeks before Fort William, his first World Cup. So essentially 16 years old. He had no off season, jumping on a bike, going over to Europe. And, but at the same time, Asa had broken his hip, and he was off his bike 7 weeks leading up to Fort William. And he flew there not even knowing if he could ride. And, everybody knows Asa won that race, but Ryder was qualified 10th and he was 11th in the final at his first one, which was, I thought that was the start of something he was going to start building on and do really well. But 2024 didn't go amazingly for Ryder. He had tons of crashes, some mistakes in qualifying, and he only made 2 finals that whole season, which doesn't keep your ride when you need points to be in the paddock and be one of the top teams. So that's kind of when we went into 2025 to refocus for Ryder and really what he wanted to do. But through that 24 season, he became detached and a little bit distant. His responsibilities were falling off. He was the guy that forgot his goggles or left his helmet behind or didn't have gloves or, just those silly little things that you have to be better about, right? And he didn't re-sign with that team, and that's when Clay Harper called me and said that he had a program with YT that he was putting together for 2025. And me and Ryder were kind of butting heads a little bit at the time, and he didn't want to be that dad.
Right, taking a quick break to talk about a tool that's become a bit of a factory setup for my digital life, NordVPN. I'm constantly on the move, whether it's traveling for races or working remotely, and I realize that keeping your private time private is essential. I use NordVPN every single day because it acts like a high-end bash guard for your data. It keeps your information encrypted, so you never have to worry about your IP or location getting out while you're on those sketchy airport or hotel Wi-Fis. But for me, the real performance gain is how it handles my subscriptions. There's nothing worse than being away from home and realizing you can't access the racing coverage or video platforms you actually pay for back home. With NordVPN, you can virtually change your IP location with one click. It allows me to access my paid subscriptions from my home country even when I'm halfway across the world for a World Cup. You can even use it to find better deals on flights or bike gear by looking at prices in other regions. They've also doubled down on safety with their threat protection feature. It blocks those intrusive website ads and even scans for malware, deleting infected files before they can make a mess of your computer. The deal? Grab exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/needle. You'll get a huge discount off your plan, plus 4 additional months on top. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Give it a try. If it's not for you, they'll issue a refund and you can pretend it never happened. Check the link in the show notes and let's get back to the episode.
And so what we have now with our suspension program is Sergio's working with the OE development for Fox. He has a team behind him, and they spent a couple days last year coming down and doing some testing, and everything's approved through Jordy, who obviously does all the World Cup stuff and things like that. So we do have the best of the best as far as like suspension testing goes and development, and we're already on the the 2640. It's already been kind of tuned for rider's weight and riding level and and things like that. So maybe we'll switch gears a little bit from rider's career path to how I ended up being or getting in this position to work with this team that we have Ryder on.
As you transition into this team manager role, can you put a bow in how you're dealing with being a supportive dad, wanting your best for your kid, having all this experience, but he's got to have fun, and you probably want to let him walk his own path as well. That's such a fine line that I don't know how I'm going to do that one day in whatever my kid decides to do, because it is his choice.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's start with that relationship first, and then that'll move into, how I feel like I can be effective even working with the team that he's going to be on.
Yeah.
We did find ourselves at odds after, the 2024 World Cup season. He underperformed, which in our book is unacceptable, right? As a parent and somebody that's guided your child to be, one of the best. And I know what his ceiling is, and that wasn't it. He showed good speed at times, but he showed a little bit of a, kind of a lackadaisical effort. And then when we're home, the focus was more hanging out with the bros. The Temecula Valley is notorious for action sports and bringing moto guys and mountain bike guys and BMX. It's huge here. We can go any direction 20 minutes and find the best of the best. Training, testing, riding, whatever. But with that comes the downside. The cool guys, the parties, the hanging out, the bros, which I dealt with all that when I was growing up and, in this area, and, and he's dealing with it now. Like I said, I believe he's on the other end of that. So leading into 2025, I know his ability is amazing. His ability to block out the noise and execute is second to none. 100%, I 100% believe that. But a lot of times it's not about what you need to do to win. It's what you can't do to win.
Yeah.
So
What you're willing to sacrifice. Huh?
So I've kind of changed my approach with him to that more than I need your alarm set at 8 and you need to be on the rower for 15 minutes by 8:30 and then we'll have breakfast. And then we're going to go do our sprints. And then we're going to go to Elsinore. And then, you know, like I've had to change that because he's maybe not a kid that wants to get up at 8 and be on the rower. He wants to get up, have breakfast, grab his BMX bike, and go to the skate park for a while. Not that he's not going to do the training. He just wants to go about it in a different way. So I've had to learn who he is and what's going on there because going into 2025, I said, the effort that I see you put in, I'll put in. I went to 2 races last year. Of all of his World Cups, of all the Pro Downhill Nationals, everything that he did, I went to 2 races. Because he told me point blank, I want to figure it out on my own. And I want to learn some things. So I let him. And again, he's such a good bike rider and able to execute and do things he needs to. He did struggle in Europe. When he went over there, he struggled and he was off pace. And I mean, he flew to, so he won Windrock last year as a junior, second year. He went there, showed up, won the race, went to Ride Rock Creek the next week for the first Pro Downhill Series National. He won that. He came home. And then he went to Mount Creek, which was the second Pro Downhill Series. And he won that. So he's 3 for 3 at this point. And I was hoping he wouldn't go to Europe last year and just focus in the U.S. and kind of rebuild some confidence. He flew to Poland. He got in the lift for practice. He cased the first jump, first run, went over the bars and broke his collarbone. Had to fly home and get the plate that was in his collarbone from 12 years old. He had to get that taken out and put a new one in. So then he was home. He was on his bike in 13 days after that. Like, that's a collarbone. We all know that. Went back to Europe. He didn't qualify for the next one. He qualified okay at Andorra and was riding really well at Andorra. Qualified okay, not great. And then they canceled the finals because of the weather. So that was kind of a bummer because I feel like maybe he was making a turn at that point. He came back, but through the whole Pro Downhill Series, he won Windrock, and then he won 3 of the 5 nationals. He won dual solo national champs again. And he was on the podium at the other 2 races that he didn't win. So he rode great. Like he was locked in. He was doing what he needed to do. He won the U.S. Open, which was the finals. He was on pace with the top pros through the first 2 segments. Admittedly said he backed off a little bit just to make sure he didn't get a flat or something silly because he had the junior side of it wrapped up points wise. Just if he just got down the hill. He goes to Lake Placid, qualifies second, 5th in the finals. That was his obviously best placing at a World Cup at this point. And then he goes up to Mount St. Anne. And he was on his own kind of at these races and just kind of do it. And he crashed in qualifying at Mount St. Anne. Got up. Qualified 20th, which was, they take 20 juniors. So he was the first one down the hill. And he had it in his first practice run on Saturday before finals. He broke a rear wheel. And he was there with no team, with nobody around. He borrowed a wheel from Crestline, from Aaron, with a mud tire with cut knobs. But he had no choice. Like, he just had to throw a wheel on, and he had to go through. He was the first one down the hill. And he was on the hot seat until the top 4 guys came down and basically got 5th again. So and again, like I said, like he top 5 a couple World Cups and won the Pro Downhill Series, won national champs. He had a great season, in my opinion, kind of stumbling through the year. So that's where I go to. I know he can do this. Like, I know he can be a competitive rider. I know that he needs to be a little more responsible and maybe a little bit more effort off of the bike a little, because it's not juniors anymore. Although the juniors are, if you top 5 the World Cup last year, you're fast. Clearly.
Dude, no doubt.
Right?
No
Right?
doubt. Good luck to top 30 in the final this year.
Exactly.
Good
Yes.
luck to them elites.
Yes. So I had to have some talks with Ryder and be like, look, I'm going to manage this team. It's going to be a really good opportunity for you for 2026, which is your first elite. I would rather you not go about it kind of on your own, just kind of winging it. Let's put maybe a little bit of structure. At least we'll have good bikes. At least we'll have good testing. I'll make sure your bikes are the best they can be. We have amazing sponsors, which I would love to plug those guys a little bit, as we wrap this up.
Do it, man. You guys are trying to make, we'll wrap it up. But this is what the platform's here for as well. Like, it's hard out there. So shout out to them.
So yeah, I mean, I have no question with his riding, and I had to check myself on this a couple of months ago. He said he went to this new track, and he was keeping up with this other rider. And I'm like, well, he's not fast anyways. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, don't say that. Because the other rider is fast. He's a really good rider. It was Ryder's first run down the hill. It's pretty gnarly. And right there, I'm second guessing his ability on a bicycle, which I don't. So I told him right then there, I said, I'll never question you about your bicycle riding again. But I will discuss off the bike antics and what needs to be done. So I think we're at a a good spot now. He brought his bike to me last night.
It sounds so challenging, Randy. Like, I'm looking at myself. I'm like thinking about my kid in the road now on his little balance bike, or like swinging a golf club or whatever he wants to do. I know, I'm obviously that dad. It'll be cool if he does some things, or at least I can hang out with him, fine. But I'm hearing these stories and I'm like, yeah, you think you know what you're going to say or what you're going to do, and you're going to make mistakes. Like, even you at your age are going, that wasn't the right thing to say, was it? To my kid or to anyone.
Yeah.
Interesting, man.
Yeah. So it is challenging. And we're going into a year that I'm going to have to be watching my P's and Q's. I want him he has really good opportunities still right now to do whatever he wants with his racing career, if you want to call it that. So I want to be here to aid that, have maybe a little bit of guidance there if he wants it, and make sure he's on the best equipment possible. So like I said, we have Fox suspension in our back pocket at a very, very high level, which is absolutely amazing. Since Ryder did miss the 1 year in 2024 where he was on TLD, which was another great family that the painter at Troy Lee that painted Ryder's first Troy Lee helmet painted my helmets in 99. So same guy. So it's like, so you can't be bummed, and Troy's a great guy. So we had no problems being on that program. It was just a bummer that he'd been in the Fox logo since he was 3 years old, being their catalogs. And then we lost it for a year. But he went back. He's with Fox again. They're supporting the team again this year, which is great. So we'll be doing Fox clothing, Fox suspension. A few years ago, I'm really good friends with the moto manager at Renthal. He CC'd me in an email with Ian, the mountain bike guy. And I got a form letter back saying, unfortunately, at this time, we don't have, blah, blah, blah. And so I kept telling Paul, I'm like, thanks, form letter guy. Like, that's all I get, a form letter? After all these years, I get a form letter? And then I met Ian personally at Sea Otter, and we were watching Dual Solemn and kind of explained our situation. And he was like, oh, well, you guys are like serious about racing. Okay. So he's been an advocate of ours and Ryder's, since then. And that was, I think, 4 years ago. So when Ryder went to IFR, he had to step away from rental and do the one-up program, which was great. But once Ryder came back to the States under the YT program, we were able to bring rental back, which they're a partner of ours again now for 2026. Now using their pedals and the rest of their line, which is amazing. ODI, Ryder has been ODI grips since he was 6 years old. We met the team manager at Red Robin while we were having dinner, and he sent Ryder a contract at 6 years old. So
that's cool.
He's actually the only current ODI rider that could actually ride for ODI longer than Brian Lopes. He'd have to be like 60, 65 when he did it. But
I might be, I might be second because it's the only group I've ridden since I was 17 or 16.
Okay.
And we got them we had to sort of bootleg them into South Africa. So I've been on their grips as well for so long. That's sick. I like that. Yeah, he's got 10 years on me.
Ryder was 10 years on before 16.
Yeah, fair enough. No, he's going to kick my ass for sure.
So they're, they're amazing. They stepped in really big for the team this year. Again, this is a very, very, very small budget team. We have really, really good product. Ryder has a great program with his Monster Army program's really good, which is what's going to, helping get to the races.
Yeah, it's cool what they're doing. That's really cool that they're doing that as well. It's been so cool seeing them step up like in the Pro Downhill series, and now we're going to have it on the World Cup series. It's sick.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's amazing. In the program
seeing what Monster's doing now.
And with Stephen Walton coming in as their team manager, super quick note on the side of that, when Stephen Walton was on the Palmer project, Jen, Jess Stever's wife, brought the Palmer project kids to my gym to do a workout. And I absolutely blew Stephen out with this very, very light workout when he was like 16 years old. And then fast forward now, he's Ryder's team manager at Monster. So pretty cool.
Dude, the network effect, huh?
Isn't it crazy?
Industry is so small. It's madness, man.
It is.
And I've got Palmer's jersey framed, hanging up in my bike shop from my first World Cup that I went to watch, and I did the Citizens ride when I was 12 or 13. And Palmer left the venue in his Dainese suit. A friend got his pants and I got his shirt. So I have like the fondest stoked memory of like us being starstruck, seeing Palmer after the race, like, dude, can I please have your shirt? And then he was like, well, I've only got one shirt. Okay, you have my pants. And he just left there like in his Dainese underwear, basically.
He probably didn't do well. He was just ready to get out of there.
Yeah, maybe, but I think he did okay there, And you know what was you must have seen it inside that jersey, so I'm just sidetracking. You know that it's you flip the collar like this, and he had a few different ones, and I reminded him when I met him later and became friends with him, and it said, I am the best. So Fox printed what Palmer told him to, and how's that for self-confident, huh?
Yeah, no, I mean, we could go down a whole nother podcast.
No, it's a whole nother podcast with him. We got to get him on.
The times I spent with him, our first year we took his box land, transferred it over to mountain bike stuff, and we just started riding. But anyways, we were with the rental thing, and then we were ODI, how that program was working for us. And so SpokeX is actually the title sponsor for the team. It's a small wheel company out of Temecula. I walked in there 4 years ago and talked to Hunter, the owner. I'm like, hey, do you want to sponsor my son for downhill racing? And he's like, who are you and who's your son? And he was thinking like, okay, we'll do a discount thing or whatever. And he's like, okay, so you ride for Intense. What kind of deal do they have? I said, we don't pay for anything. And he was like, huh? It's like, well, what do you want? I said, you give me 2 sets of wheels complete. That means he has to buy the hubs and spokes and all the stuff. and then anything else I'll pay cost for the hubs. And he was like, so I almost pulled the Palmer move and just kind of like said what I wanted. And we've been great friends since. And, Ryder was on his wheels before the IFR thing. And then as soon as it was over, I went back into there and I got SpokeX on with the team for last year. And then a few months ago, Hunter was like, hey, I have an opportunity to do like a small team and we can go to the races as a team. And at this point, YT hadn't shut down. And Bill Lamar was running the program for Clay, the YT program. So I was going to leave Ryder there. I wasn't going to do anything. I was just going to help Hunter on this side and just go to the races with him or do whatever. And then as soon as the YT program shut down, I was like, hey, let's just put Ryder on it. So the team is actually SpokeX Mondraker, because Mondraker wants to do a little bit more in the U.S. This is the first time anybody even knows about it. We haven't done a press release or photos or anything yet. So I've been talking to Eric Richter, who's the U.S. Marketing manager for Mondraker, and they want to do more in the U.S. And he was actually at Rock Shocks in the late 90s, so we had met back then. So there's another kind of networking thing, which is kind of wild. But yeah, Ryder's been on the bike for only a couple weeks now. It's actually last year's platform. We don't have the 26 yet. It looks like we'll have to go into the first part of the season on the older model. But yeah, it's a SpokeX Mondraker. They're coming on, with support with the bikes and doing what they can. Fox Clothing. Like I said, I would say one of the really good things is we were able to bring Continental over. I bought Ryder a set of Continental tires like 4 years ago just to try them, and he hasn't ridden another tire since. He's been fortunate that IFR was on Continental, and then the team was Continental last year, and we were able to bring them over to this team for this season. So super happy about that. And then our relationship with Colin at TRP, he's all in with us, and he's like, whatever you guys need. So I've had to be like the manager and do the parts order for the whole season for tires and, all the bars and stems and pedals and seats and then all the drivetrain and brake stuff through TRP and, getting the fluids and brake pads. Like, I've always done it for Ryder.
That's overwhelming, man.
Yeah.
That's a lot. But for a full team, I think I do my own orders now, and I think back to how spoiled I was with a pro team. I just get there and I get my 3 to 5 bikes a year. All the parts work. Everything's there. Dude, it's overwhelming. All the part numbers. And okay, that one's not in stock, so I got to go to that one. And then that arrives. You're like, well, I can't build that bike yet. It's a challenge,
right?
Man.
Yeah. And to be honest, like Ryder's always had that because I was able to do that for him as an individual racing BMX. He was never on a factory team. I put all of his sponsors together as an individual. So he wore different color kits, like he was on different color bikes, like he was kind of his own unique situation. So I've always done that for him coming into this and doing it, a little bit higher level, putting it together with, so it's Ryder and Connor Nipscher is another junior here and that doesn't live far from us. And then we're going to help Zach Harper, which is Clay Harper's son. Clay did a ton for Ryder, last year, putting him on the team and bring him in as a part of that. I wanted to return the favor for Zach to have a pit, have a place, and have a bike and be able to go race. It'll be his second year as a junior also. So,
and you're going to do World Cups with Ryder as well, or are you going to focus US first and then select for you World Cups? Like, what's the current plan?
Yes. US first. So with where Ryder's at with his racing, I've kind of sat back with him and I said, look, let's focus on the Pro Downhill Series and get you in a position where if you're feeling comfortable, if you're like a top 5 podium contender, maybe in the mix to, be on that sharp end, maybe win a race or if we're seeing those things out of you, whole shots or, whatever, if we're seeing the effort and the competitiveness and you're right there and you're in the mix, then by all means, let's see what we can do if we can get to a World Cup. But if you're 25th and you're just off the pace, like there's no reason to, press that other issue. You got to be kind of firing on all 8 and, doing what you need to do here in the U.S. and being in all this for my whole life, I can read an athlete and rider and kind of know where they're at and if they're ready to step up to that level or not. And again, maybe Europe's off the table this year with budgeting and support on that side. But if we're seeing what we want to see and he's riding the way he wants to and he's enjoying it, he's fast and the bikes are good, it doesn't mean we couldn't, visit doing, the 1199 in Whistler or Lake Placid. So
yeah, I was going to say it makes so much sense with the World Cups going to top 30 in the final, a lot of those juniors going up. Everyone develops at a different age. And I think back to, remember John Cacaldi? I don't know if you know that name. I mean, it was after you raced Norbus, but it's like, it just made sense for him.
we raced them together.
Yeah, so he had...
It took him a little while to get going, yeah.
Yeah, but he had an American team that said, we want to focus here. And then he would dip into a few World Cups and still perform. And I think with the Monster Pro Downhill Series, like, there's such good racing. And like you say, you can just test where you're at. You don't overspend on trying to get experience overseas and then you miss out on the finals. It was a different story when 60 or 80 go through. Then you get more reps while you're there. But if you're not racing Q2 and you're not racing finals, like, you're not getting enough bike time either. So
yeah,
I really like where you guys are at. And I think, as I said, the series is really good. And yeah, I think just patience, from what I can hear, both of you just need, patience is going to be what gets you through this little period. So that's exciting, man. And this has been so cool. I think we could have gone on a million different tangents, like the Palmer stuff, what he brought to the sport. I think there's a few more versions we can chat about it another time.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. But yeah, it's definitely, like, I love getting in these situations where you just get into a comfortable conversation. And we kind of jumped around and we did some things and talked about this and talked about that. And, we still haven't even got into, like, what we're seeing in moto right now. Like, I just watched your one with Andreas about how could we take, some of the Supercross look and representation and bring it to downhill. And, there's some things there too. And then talking about the riders and how they approach things and how downhill riders approach things. And we hit on some of that a little bit, but there are some vast differences between the two, but there are some similarities too. And then, like you said about the moto guys respecting the downhill, seeing Kenny at Leo Gang last year and doing interviews and kind of hanging out there, that was really cool to see. It's always cool to see when my industries, I would call it, BMX, mountain bike, moto, kind of coexist together. So, Kenny, when he first came over to the States and he was a lights KTM rider, he rode BMX a little bit and he came over to the house. He lived not far from us and I had little box jumps in the driveway and Ryder was 5 years old and Kenny and Ryder were doing jumps together, playing around in the street. So it's cool to see, like, that kind of stuff come around. And now you got Kenny going to downhill races and, maybe in 2 years, Kenny go to race and Ryder will be like one of the guys there, that's kind of where I'm seeing this whole thing come to fruition and the transition. And, maybe in 2 years, Ryder won't be racing and he'll be moving on. But where he's at right now, I feel like he's at a point now where he wants to give it a good effort and kind of see where he can take it. And as long as the support's there, then I'll be behind it.
Yeah, man. And I think if you really take a bird's eye view, he's had these injuries and they've compounded. So he hasn't always had the reps going into seasons and stuff. So, I mean, if he's not listening to you, you can send him my number, and maybe I'll say a same thing, but it comes from me, he might listen. But
Yeah.
everyone just develops at a different time, and you just got to keep at it. But it does show the growth of downhill, right? The growth of the sport that a Kenny is coming to watch, and I think if the guys didn't have a crazy schedule that they did, and the races were maybe closer, like California, the downhillers, it's maybe they go there to test. Maybe they like going to Cali. Back in the day, I would be based there. So it was easy
Mhm.
to go watch Vegas Supercross because we had Boulder. There was like a downhill race out in Boulder City.
Mhm.
So, I think more people would go to downhill races if it was easier logistically to get to them. Kenny was
Yes,
over in Europe, so
absolutely.
it probably made sense. Or he could go to Europe.
Yeah.
He could like go to his home and go to the downhill. So it's like, yeah, I'll go to the downhill because it gets me to go home. What, like, as we sort of unwind, maybe the last parting thought is like, what do you think downhill can learn from motocross and supercross to like take it to the next level?
Well, again, I keep contradicting maybe a little bit, but um, the effort with development in and the bikes and like testing, like I just watched one of Aaron's podcast and then Nico's from Tasmania and how they're working on different reaches and they have these settings and this setting and I do think there's maybe more of that in this than I'm really seeing, because I'm here but I'm not, you know. Um, but in moto, like they raced Saturday night, and most of the staff guys are in communications today, doing something, and there was probably test bikes done being built and ready on Thursday or Friday by the staff that doesn't go to the races, and they'll be at the test track Monday morning, running through X, whatever that part is, whatever that, head stay changes the feel of the bike, or that pull rod does to set the shock in a different position in the beginning, or, they got a new bladder for the shock, or they got a new piston that flows a little more oil, or, there's always things that they're never sitting idle. And again, I said in the beginning, like maybe Chase is trying too much. But I know over at Cowie, they have Brock Tickle. And he's as fast as anybody on a Wednesday. Like, he's unbelievable. And he can run through some things and he can do whatever. But he was always a test, train guy also. So maybe if he could change his thought process a little bit too and pull back and be like, okay, well, you've ridden this might be better. Go back to this for the weekend. And just race the bike. And then let's revisit it next week. So I think there has to be some of that balance too. And again, I don't know exactly what they're doing on the downhill side, like if Bruni and Finn are on, a different linkage every week because, Bruni's trying to beat Jackson and he's getting frustrated and he's like, what's the bike? It ain't me, like I don't get that sense from Bruni. I feel like he puts a lot on his own plate and he's like, I just got to be better. Right. Like that's
Yeah.
like he's like a Cooper
Yeah,
Webb. Like,
Bruni's almost to his own detriment. Yeah, it's almost to
yeah,
his own
like,
detriment. He keeps saying how bad he is in the wet, and it was a little weakness, but he almost is too hard on himself, and I think that's why he's a
yeah,
champion because he's never satisfied.
exactly.
Never satisfied, Bruni. He's always just looking like very good at reflecting it to himself and like making himself better
Yeah.
and aware that Jackson is better in certain places, but I mean, apart from Loic not lining up at that last race because of that unfortunate crash, Loic had the
Yeah.
upper hand going into the final.
It did.
He
Yeah.
knew that Jackson was going to be faster on certain part of the tracks, but he focused on what he could do better on that track, and he really is. He is
Yeah.
super brilliant at times. Like what he's doing in this modern era, with the amount of world championships he's won, and he won't go down as maybe the winningest World Cup rider, maybe, but I think it's because he's been in these title hunts so often. And I don't know, you as a trainer, you're probably going to pull your rider back a little bit and say, we don't have to win all the races anymore, dude. We just need to win the title. And you know
Yeah.
that from moto. That's like Aaron Gwynn brought that to the sport, right? He was just like, I
Yeah.
want to win the title. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. And if you look at now, they're even in moto, there's a lot of older riders. First off, with like I looked at stats yesterday in Arlington, they're going to next weekend. Since 2018, there hasn't been another rider win that venue, with the exception of Eli and Webb. That's unbelievable. And that was kind of the same thing at Glendale. It's Webb and Eli. Like, they just win races. And they're older. And then you got Johnny O'Mara leading the Lawrence brothers. And Hunter already at a young age understands, I don't have to win every week. It doesn't matter. Which drives Carmichael crazy because he had to win every week or he was pissed off. So you can hear some of the underlying like jokes. I know Ricky OK and Villopoto, and they're like, man, I wish when I raced I didn't have to win every weekend. And they're kind of being serious, but they're kind of like, that ain't cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's a different era.
Yeah.
And I feel like, the same thing in downhill. Like, I was rider's mechanic at IFR, and it was the first time I'd been to a World Cup event since 99, 2000. And all the same people are there. I'm running into the same people they're just not riders now. They're running teams, they're managing teams, they're working with a product sponsor, Cedric's announcing races and, working with the UCI. And I'm just like, dude, it's all the same people in the sport. They bring a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience to what some of these young kids can do. With Nico managing ASA and that group that he has around him, and especially bringing Aaron on now, like, the sky's the limit. Like, where's his ceiling?
Dude, how good is that? How good is that fit, man, for both of them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
like, I think that's gonna spur Aaron on.
Yeah, and when I heard that yesterday, Nico bringing that up when he was doing the podcast in Tasmania, I instantly thought when I had Villopoto and Nick Way. Nick Way brought experience and just dig and grind, and Villopoto brought the TMZ side of it, like talk trash, act like an idiot, do the work. Like, they did the work together, but dude, they were like peas and carrots. One of them had the experience and could calm Ryan down, and then Ryan had that youthful like exuberance where it made Nick feel spunky and have that spark again. And I feel like with Asa and Aaron, they could do that together if they play it right. Now, I look at all those scenarios, and I have Ryder at 18 now with his youthful, baggy. He wears the baggiest pants that Fox has. So when he's training, he's like, he looks like he's an LBZ rider from, like, he's Seth Enslow or something. So he's like, baggy pants. He literally does not wear a jersey when he goes and practices. He puts his chest protector on, and half the time he doesn't wear, like, sometimes he wears gloves, sometimes he doesn't. He has that very, very loose, fun vibe style. He does carry that when he goes to the races. He's joking around, playing around when he's on the shuttle thing going up, when everybody else is getting all like, oh no, we got a race now. And Ryder's just like, hey, well, whatever, And I love that about him because he's able to block it all out and zone in and concentrate. But I think he needs to find the yin and yang. He needs to find his yang that's going to be like, okay, that's fun, but let's chill out a little bit. And I can't be that person anymore. So it's kind of where we're at.
You want me to text him?
I would love to. I'll send you his number.
Hey, man.
I actually thought he was going to pop in.
I'll holler at him. Nah, man. I am. Oh, that would have been cool. I could have seen him give you some shit in on camera. But I joke because I was the young kid on teams, and then I become the elder statesman when I went on a team with Danny, and he had all the talent in the world, and it kept me young. It kept me wanting to ride my
Yeah.
bike more versus, you know,
Yes.
it was easier to go do the work. Like, I'll just go for a road ride. I'll go do this. Like, no, we're going to do another 10 laps. I'm like, dude, it's raining outside. I've done 8. And he's like, we're going to ride till we wear these brake pads out. And he would drag me out.
Mhm.
So it was cool. And, you know, I kind of became like almost an older brother to him. So I definitely agree with you. I think if Aaron and Asa play that right, which it seems like Aaron's ready for that role as well. He has been for a while. Plus, he's not going to have a lot of distractions. Nico's going to take care of running the team. That's going to be cool.
Yes.
And Ryder will come around, man. Like I said, I was that same kid to my dad, my late dad. We butted heads pretty hard, and he was the same as you. It was like, hey, man, if I'm going to be putting all this effort in, you need to put the effort in. I don't care if you win or lose, but just match the effort, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Match the effort.
dude,
Mhm.
good luck with that, man. This has been awesome, and I hope to connect in person at some point. And yeah, give Ryder a kick up the arse from me, and maybe I'll send him a
I
text as
will.
well. And I'll follow your guys' journey, man. It's really cool, and everyone has
I
like a
appreciate it.
different path in life, right? You had
Yes.
the craziest path ever to this, and Ryder's gonna have his path.
Yep. Yep. And hopefully he finds who he is in himself and enjoys it and comes out the end of it, you know, with a decent career and, you know, maybe some success in World Cup downhill. And then maybe he's working in the industry or has a business or, you know, kind of moves on and does whatever he wants. So, yeah. So that's kind of the goal, you know. I mean, I would love for him to be, you know, UCI downhill world champ 6 times and, you know, 45 World Cup wins. But, you know, I think there's how many dads out there want that for their kid too, you know? So, as long as he's trying and he's putting in good effort and he's enjoying himself, you know, we'll be happy.
Wicked, man. Well, thanks so much. Make sure you go follow Randy Lawrence and Ryder Lawrence for that matter on Instagram. It's a good follow. And dude, if you like this episode, it is crazy to see the amount of people that watch, listen, comment, but they're not subscribed. So if you can do me that one favor, that would be great. Till the next one. Peace.